From this day forward, every tear you cry out of compassion, not self-pity, will become a precious stone.
Cry, stupid orphan, and fill up this room with stones.
Adanna, an orphan, was at the river fetching water when she saw an old woman struggling with a pot so heavy it could break her back. Everyone walked past, but Adanna's pure heart wouldn't let her ignore someone in pain. She rushed to help, carrying the heavy pot all the way to the woman's home. The old woman looked at her with tears in her eyes and blessed her with something so powerful it would change her life forever. This story will touch your heart. Let me tell you what happened. Adanna woke up before the first rooster crowed. The mat she slept on was thin and worn, placed in the corner of the kitchen where the smoke from cooking fires had stained the walls black. Her body ached. Yesterday, she had fetched water 6 times, swept the compound twice, washed everyone's clothes, and worked in the cassava farm until her hands bled. She was 18 years old. Adanna! Auntie Nkiru's voice cut through the darkness like a machete. Why is the water pot still empty?
Why is the water pot still empty? Do you want my children to die of thirst?
Adanna said nothing. She never did. She simply wrapped her torn wrapper around her thin body and picked up the clay pot. Her cousins, Chidi and Amaka, were still sleeping on their soft mats, their bellies full from last night's dinner. Adanna had eaten the leftovers, 3 spoons of gari and soup that had more water than fish. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. 4 years ago, when Mama and Papa died in that terrible motor accident, Uncle Obi had come to take her. She is family, he had told the village. We will care for her. But care meant work. Endless, thankless work. As Adanna walked to the stream, she passed Mama Chioma's house. The sweet smell of akara frying made her dizzy with hunger. She passed the school where children her age laughed and played, their uniforms clean and pressed. Adanna went to school too, but in a uniform so torn that the other children called her beggar girl. She didn't cry anymore. Tears were a luxury she couldn't afford. At the stream, women were already gathering, balancing pots on their heads while they gossiped. Adanna greeted them respectfully, but they barely noticed her. She was just the orphan, the nobody. She bent down to fill her pot, her arms trembling from exhaustion. This was her 3rd trip today. Uncle Obi wanted water for bathing, Auntie Nkiru needed water for cooking, the cousins wanted water for washing their school uniforms. Nobody asked if Adanna was tired. Nobody cared. As she lifted the heavy pot onto her head, balancing it carefully, she whispered the words Mama used to say. Help others and heaven will help you. Even though Mama was gone, Adanna remembered. And that's when she saw the old woman. Ancient, frail, struggling with a water pot so heavy it could break her back. The pot swayed dangerously on her head as she took slow, painful steps. And everyone just walked past. Mama Igor, the rich trader who sold fabrics at the market, walked past the old woman without even looking. Her wrapper was expensive Ankara, her head tied high with pride. I have no time for beggars, she muttered. 3 strong young men passed next, their muscles bulging from farm work. They saw the old woman struggling, but they were discussing football and girls.
Yeah, and did you see
Not our problem, one
cute,
laughed.
But what about the game?
A group of women with empty pots walked past, pretending they didn't see. If we help every old woman, when will we finish our own work? One whispered. Adanna watched all of this, and her heart broke. The old woman was now leaning against a tree, breathing hard. The pot was too heavy. Her arms shook. Her legs looked like they might collapse. Adanna looked at her own pot. It was already heavy on her head. She was already late. If she didn't get home soon, Auntie Nkiru would beat her again. but something in her chest wouldn't let her walk away. Mama used to say, "Help others and heaven will help you," Adanna whispered to herself. "Even though Mama is gone, I will remember." She walked to the old woman and carefully lowered her pot to the ground. "Nem, good morning," Adanna said softly. "Please, let me help you." The old woman looked at her with eyes that seemed to see everything, every scar, every hungry night, every tear Adanna had swallowed. "Child," her voice was barely a whisper, "you are tired yourself. You are carrying your own burden." "I can carry too," Adanna said, and she meant it. She helped the old woman lower the heavy pot. Then, with strength she didn't know she had, Adanna lifted the old woman's pot onto her own first, balancing it carefully. She tied her own smaller pot to her wrapper, carrying it on her hip. The weight was crushing. Her neck screamed in pain. Her legs shook, but she started walking. "Where is your house, Nem?" Adanna asked. "Follow the path beyond the Iroko tree," the old woman said, walking slowly beside her. It took 30 minutes of pain. Adanna's vision blurred. Sweat poured down her face. Her arms trembled. But she didn't stop. She didn't complain. When they reached the old woman's small hut at the edge of the village, Adanna carefully lowered both pots. She fetched a cup and gave the old woman water to drink first. "Thank you, my daughter. You don't know what you've done for me today." "It's nothing, Inem," Adanna said, smiling despite her exhaustion. "We must help each other." She turned to leave, knowing Aunt Nkiro would be furious. But then, the old woman's voice changed. It became powerful, like thunder before rain. "Child." When Adanna looked back, the old woman's eyes were glowing, actually glowing like stars in the night sky. "Do you know what you've just done?" The air around them began to shimmer. The old woman stood straighter, taller. Her ragged clothes seemed to glow with light that didn't come from the sun. Her face, wrinkled and tired just moments before, now shone with power that made Adanna's breath catch. "Chineke," Adanna whispered, falling to her knees. "I am not what I seem," the old woman said, her voice now filling the air like drums at a festival. "I am Annie, goddess of the earth, mother of all. For 7 days, I have walked through this village in disguise, testing, watching, waiting." The light around her grew brighter. 7 days, child. Do you know how many people passed me? The rich trader with her expensive wrappers, the strong men with their muscles and pride, the women with their full pots and empty hearts. Hundreds of people, hundreds. Adanna couldn't speak. She could only listen. They all saw
That
me
goal was
struggling.
amazing.
They
Yeah,
all
did you see
walked
the new
past.
girl?
Some
She's cute,
laughed,
but what about the
some
game?
pretended not to see. Some actually saw me fall yesterday, and they stepped over me like I was nothing. Tears rolled down Adanna's cheeks. "But you," the goddess's voice became soft, tender. "You are just an orphan. You have nothing. You are hungry. You are tired. You are late and will be beaten for helping me. You carried your own burden already. And still, you stopped." The goddess knelt down and placed her glowing hand on Adanna's head. "You have the purest heart I have found in all my years watching humans. Therefore, I give you this blessing. From this day forward, every tear you cry out of compassion, not self-pity, but compassion for others, will become a precious stone. Every act of true kindness you perform will multiply the blessing. Your tears of love will build your future." "Nah, I don't understand." "You will," the goddess smiled. "But remember this, the blessing only works with a pure heart. If you become greedy, if you become selfish, if you cry for yourself instead of others, the blessing will disappear. Kindness is the key. Never forget that." Before Adanna could respond, the goddess began to fade. Like smoke in the wind, she disappeared, leaving only the faint smell of flowers and rain. Adanna stood alone in front of the small hut, which was now just an empty space. No hut, no old woman, nothing. Had it been real? She picked up her pot in a daze and started walking home. She didn't notice that her pot felt lighter than air. She didn't notice that her torn wrapper looked somehow cleaner. She didn't notice the small, clear stone that lay on the ground where her tears had fallen. The blessing had already begun.
When Adanna reached home, Aunt Nkiru was waiting with a cane. "Where have you been? Do you think this is your father's house where you can waste time?" Adanna started to explain, but the words caught in her throat. Suddenly, she thought about the old woman. No, the goddess, struggling alone. Thought about how nobody helped her. Thought about all the lonely people in the world who needed kindness. A single tear rolled down her cheek. When it hit the ground, it didn't disappear. It crystallized into a small, perfect diamond that sparkled in the sunlight. Aunt Nkiru's mouth fell open. What is this?" Adanna touched her cheek, shocked. She remembered the goddess's words. Every tear you cry out of compassion will become a precious stone. That evening, little Ngozi from next door came crying to the compound. Her mother was sick and they had no money for medicine. Adanna's heart broke for her. As she hugged Ngozi and whispered, "It will be okay, Nne. I will help you." Tears of compassion fell from her eyes. Each tear became a precious stone. Adanna gathered them and ran to Ngozi's house. "Please, sell these. Buy medicine for your mama." Ngozi's mother recovered, and word began to spread. Every day, Adanna had new stories of suffering. A widow with no food for her children, an old man who couldn't pay school fees for his grandchildren, a family whose house collapsed in the rain. And every time Adanna heard these stories, her pure heart broke. She cried tears of genuine compassion, and those tears became sapphires, rubies, emeralds, diamonds, a rainbow of blessings. She never kept them for herself. She gave them all away. She fed hungry children, she paid school fees for orphans like herself, she bought medicine for the sick, she rebuilt houses for the poor. Within weeks, the village transformed. Children who used to beg for food now went to school with full bellies. Widows who used to struggle alone now had support. The sick received treatment, and Adanna, she still lived in Uncle Obi's house, still slept on her thin mat, still wore simple clothes, but now she smiled because she had discovered something more valuable than all the precious stones in the world, the joy of helping others. But the more she helped others, the more Uncle Obi's family grew jealous. They watched the precious stones appear, they watched the village praise Adanna, they watched her transform lives. And jealousy, as the elders say, is a poison that destroys from within. One night, Uncle Obi and Aunt Nkiru made a plan. "If the girl can cry stones, we should control her," Uncle Obi whispered. "We took her in, we fed her. Those stones belong to us." The next morning, they locked Adanna in a room. "You will cry for us now," Aunt Nkiru commanded. "Think of sad things and fill this bowl with stones. Then we will be rich." Adanna shook her head. "Aunt, it doesn't work like that. The goddess said, 'Cry,'" Uncle Obi shouted, "or we will beat you until you do." They pinched her, they slapped her, they said cruel words. And yes, Adanna cried. She cried from pain and fear and sadness. But not a single tear became a stone. They just fell, ordinary and salty, disappearing into nothing. Because these tears came from self-pity, not compassion, and the blessing didn't work that way. Uncle Ori and Aunt Nkiru tried for 3 days. They tried everything, but they couldn't force the blessing because their hearts were full of greed. Finally, the village elders heard about what was happening. Led by Papa Emeka, the oldest man in the village, they came to Uncle Obi's compound. "Bring the girl out," Papa Emeka commanded. When they saw Adanna, bruised, thin, exhausted but still unbroken, the elders were furious. "Is this how you treat family?"
Papa Emeka's voice thundered. "This child has fed the hungry, healed the sick, and lifted the poor, while you, who have everything, wanted to cage her like an animal for your greed." The whole village had gathered now. They all knew what Uncle Ubi had done. "You took an orphan into your home and you treated her like a slave. You ate while she starved. You rested while she walked. And when the gods blessed her for her pure heart, you tried to steal it." Auntie Nkiru fell to her knees crying. "We were wrong. We were so wrong. Please forgive us." Uncle Obi's head hung in shame. The elders turned to Adanna. "Child, what do you want us to do to them?" Everyone waited. The village held its breath. Adanna looked at her uncle and aunt. She thought about the years of suffering, the hunger, the beatings, the loneliness. She had every right to demand justice. But then she thought about the goddess's words, pure heart. She thought about Mama's words, help others and heaven will help you. And she cried, not for herself, but for them, for their wasted lives, for the bitterness that poisoned their hearts, for the love they had never learned to give. Her tears fell, and each one became a stone, pure white diamonds that glowed with forgiveness. "I forgive you," Adanna said softly, "and I will help you learn what the goddess taught me, that true wealth isn't in what we have, but in what we give." The elders nodded with approval. The village wept with emotion. At that moment, the air shimmered again. The goddess Ani appeared one last time, visible to everyone now. "My daughter Adanna," she said, her voice like music, "you have passed the final test. Even when betrayed, you chose kindness. Even when hurt, you chose forgiveness. This is the greatest blessing of all." She touched Adanna's head. "You will never lack anything you need, but more importantly, you will never lack what matters most, a pure heart that sees others' gain and chooses to help." Then she looked at the village. "Let this child's story teach you all. The greatest riches are not in gold or stones, but in a kind heart." Adanna, who had nothing, gave everything she had, her time, her strength, her tears, her forgiveness, and in return, the universe gave her everything she needed. The goddess faded, leaving behind a truth that settled into every heart present. Years later, when the elders tell this story to children gathering under the Iroko tree, they always end it the same way. Adanna built a home for herself, but she never left her uncle's family to suffer. She helped them learn kindness. She transformed the entire village, built a school for orphans, a hospital for the sick, homes for the homeless. But do you know what she treasured most? Not the precious stones or the blessings or the riches. It was the day the goddess appeared to her as an old woman struggling with a water pot. Because that day, she learned the greatest secret in the world. Blessings don't come to those who have the most, but to those who give the most. And sometimes, the person you help might be the very one sent to bless you. When you see someone struggling and you have the power to help, it doesn't matter how small you are, how poor you are, how tired you are, help them. Because the real blessing isn't in what you receive, it's in who you become when you choose kindness over comfort, love over selfishness, giving over taking. Adanna never forgot that day at the stream. And every day until she was old and grey, she would go back to that same spot, hoping to help another struggling soul. Because she learned that the real blessing, the one that never runs out, the one that transforms everything, is the joy of helping others. And that, dear children, is the blessing that changed everything. The village still stands today, and at the stream where women fetch water, there is a stone marker with words carved deep. Here, a 12-year-old orphan girl helped an old woman, and in that moment of pure kindness, heaven opened and the world changed forever. May we all remember, help others and heaven will help you.